Life University is part of the teaching arm of the Tabernacle Church. The Tabernacle, we focus in on 5 areas: missions, evangelism, teaching, attractional ministry, and just loving our neighbors as ourselves. So in the teaching component of the Tabernacle, we just feel it's important that we help to equip and empower the community. Jesus said that he came that we might have life and that we would have that life more abundantly. We know that people, even after they give their life to Jesus Christ, may not experience the abundant life because their health is failing, their finances are in a shamble, they're undereducated, leadership is lacking or not there. And so what we want to do is come alongside of our community and help to empower and help to educate. Some have said that knowledge is power. We believe that knowledge is more than power. We believe that knowledge is life. The Bible says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so knowledge is more than just having power. Knowledge is life. And so what we hope that you will experience through our Life University sessions is you'll be empowered and equipped to experience a better life. Life University also has a scholarship component. If you or someone you know is interested in furthering their education, whether it's a trade school, whether it's going on to a traditional university or a community college, they can get a scholarship that can be renewable for 2 years. It would just require them to participate in our Life University sessions, and it's just that simple. And so we really would like to see more people take advantage of that opportunity to further their education. And that's really important to us here at the Tabernacle, is that we see people grow in that regards. Our special guest tonight is Sam Melden. He is the executive director of the Servant Leadership Institute here in Toledo, Ohio. And one thing that is for sure, Jesus came to show us that he was not to be served, but that he came to serve. And he said that the greatest leader is the one who serves the most. And so I'm excited about this topic tonight, to learn more about servant leadership, about how we can come alongside of and help our community, help our family, help our friends. Family is so important. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of it tonight. If you have questions, this is a great place to be, because we're going to have a Q&A. So I want you to start thinking about what questions you might have as it relates to leadership and maybe servant leadership or leadership in our community. So just begin to think about, what does that even mean to you, leadership? Because I'm sure Sam's going to have some questions. He's going to ask us to, shout out, and I'll come along with the microphone whenever we get into the Q&A, and I'm going to ask you to speak into the microphone so that we can catch it on the video. Will you help me give a warm welcome to our special guest faculty tonight, Sam Melden.
I'm excited to get into servant leadership and talk about it. It feels like if you're going to talk about leadership and you're in a church, servant leadership seems like a pretty good fit. But I want to maybe take that from a slightly different angle and really dive into these ideas. One quick note I want to mention. In my work at the Center for Servant Leadership, which is soon to also be, or instead be, Leadership Toledo. It's a different nonprofit organization in the city, and these two institutions are merging together. And so, actually, this is real-time stuff. As of July 1st, we will be merged together, and I will be one of the staff members at Leadership Toledo. It's really exciting to think about these two nonprofits merging together because we've historically done very similar work. And what I was going to say as a way of preface is that most of the time we're talking about leadership development in the context of that, well, not in the context of church. We're often doing leadership development in a space where you might have people from many, many, many different faith backgrounds or no faith background at all, right? So our task, specifically at the Center for Servant Leadership, is to think about how can we talk about leadership principles and not have them reliant upon church language, right? It doesn't have to be quoting Bible verses to draw out leadership principles. But hopefully what you'll see tonight is that it's all steeped there. It all kind of starts there anyway. And if you come from that perspective, if you have that lens that you're looking at the world already, you will see that. So that's that. Who's familiar with the idea of servant leadership in general? Who has any understanding, read, studied? Okay. I have a bit of a struggle. It's maybe ironic. I have a bit of a struggle talking about servant leadership because I, for the life of me, can't figure out what other kind of leadership there is. Like, what's the other option? There's like I guess if you're in a war, you might be able to say that the war general has to kind of drive the people under them in a different way. But hopefully at the end of our evening tonight, you might see that it is actually in their best interest to operate as a servant leader, even in that context. So in my work, I can't figure out what other types of leadership there are. In fact, what I've been saying is the only other types of leadership I know is just bad leadership. It's either servant leadership or it's just not very good. And so we'll get into that a little bit. I want to do something quickly so I can get a better understanding, and hopefully in the Q&A we'll really dive into some of this. But I want to know where you're coming from tonight. Could someone give me, and maybe a handful of people, give me some leadership challenges that you might be going through or wrestling with currently in your life, in your context. I see a bunch of kids, so I'm assuming that there's parents in the room. I have 3 small children. I know the leadership challenges that come along with being a parent, right? Those work here. If you're talking about business, if you're talking about community challenges, if you're talking about church challenges, I want to know, give me a handful of challenges, leadership challenges that you're currently going through. Go ahead. Say again? You're not listened to. Okay, that's good.
Doing the right thing, although nobody's watching.
So issues of integrity, doing the right thing when no one may be watching. Go ahead. Cooperation, working together. In whatever context you might find yourself. Okay. In business. Okay. Go ahead. We only need one more. Did you have one?
No, you got it.
Oh, business. Okay. That's really helpful. Here's what I want to do. Does anyone, we're in a church, right? Anyone have is there like a Bible in the room? Do we have Bibles around? Not to like embarrass anyone. Apps. Apps work. I like apps. I have it in my pocket as a backup. So Deuteronomy 30:19. Who wants to read that for me? We have a volunteer. It's funny, I love that Pastor Sweeney brought up Jesus as this model of servant leadership, and I'm going to go to Moses. Well, I mean, whatever. It's all the... So there's this moment at the end of Deuteronomy where Moses says to the people, and I'm going to have someone read it in a second, but this is a little Sam paraphrase. I set before you 2 choices, life and death, blessing and curse. That's where I'm actually going to start. I want to talk about that a little bit. Who has it? Can you read it for me?
I call heaven and earth to record this day against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and thy seed may live.
Thank you. You know, can I just admit to you something silly? When I thought of this verse to kind of talk about tonight, I forgot that this was called Life University. And then I walked in the room and I thought, oh, this is going to work out pretty well. This might actually apply here. So life, death. What was the other one? My handwriting's brutal, but this is just as a reminder. I think I lost the pen already. Blessing and curse, right? Do we have another pen? I'm sorry. This is a total curveball. If we have another pen, I'll get it. I want to put some other words next to these because I'm convinced that the task of leadership is made up of millions of tiny little choices between life and death, blessing and curse, every single day, over and over and over and over. And the servant leader, which is the term we're going to be using, like I said, is just a good leader, right? But the servant leader is someone who chooses life, who, when given the option, chooses blessing. And there's a couple other words that I want to put on the sheet here too. You can crowd can remember them if I don't have a pen. I want to think about tonight curiosity and certainty. Curiosity and certainty. And then I want to talk about abundance and scarcity. Because I'm convinced that good leadership is from a place of curiosity and abundance instead of certainty and scarcity. I want you to think through, is this a pen for me? Man, the support staff here is just fantastic. So, curiosity, certainty, abundance, scarcity. When you're in a position of leadership and you're in an interaction with another human being, because quite frankly, leadership has to do with how you interact with other people, right? Do you approach that other human being, this person, I mean, we're in a church, look out. Do you approach this person who has this image of God, this imago Dei within them? Do you approach them with a posture of certainty? Like, I know exactly who you are. I've sized you up. I know everything about you. I know what you bring to the table. I know what you're going to say. I know how smart you are. I know how capable you are. I don't even need to ask you any questions because I'm the leader and you report to me. Or do you approach them with the posture of curiosity, saying, I wonder what you might bring to this conversation. I wonder what you might bring to the table in this moment. I wonder what God might be doing in you that I can learn from in this space. I'm curious about the gifts and talents that you have to help us get from the place where we are to where we're going. Do you have the posture of certainty? I already know what you're going to do. I know what you're going to say. I don't need to ask any questions. I don't need to listen to you. Or do you have the posture of curiosity? I'm curious about what you might think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where you're leading or someone's leading you, you're in this position, you're working on this project, you're in this company, and you feel like someone's asking you a question, but they don't really care what you have to say? Right? Yeah, first of all, the nods at that was way too fast. Right? Because it's true. It happens all the time. We have situations where people ask us a question and then you see their eyes glaze over. Or they ask you a question and maybe if you take a split second too long to articulate an answer, what do they say? Oh yeah, no, that's good. I have an idea already. Oh. So why were you asking me? Again, the servant leader is curious about what might be alive in the people. Right? Here's another reason that happens. Because a good leader understands what? That there is a group of people in this challenge, environment, business, struggle. There is a group of people. And it is not simply about I'm the leader and I have to take care of my people. No, I'm the leader and I'm responsible for the fact that we are being taken care of. That we are taking care of one another. All throughout the Scriptures, the church is built on this notion of what? One anothering. There is no notion that there is some leader outside of that. The leader is within that process. And for a leader to exhibit what they need to actually live and function within that process, they have to be curious more than they are certain. So curiosity and certainty. Life, death, blessing, curse. Curiosity, certainty. Here's another one, and this is one of my favorites. Abundance and scarcity. As you think about the world, how do you envision the world? This is not just like the world, but your world. The challenges you're facing. When you wake up tomorrow, what will you think about when you read the news? When you think about the world, how do you think about it? Do you think it's a zero-sum game? You familiar with the term zero-sum game? There's $100. If I give you one, I only have 99 left because there's limited resources. There's not enough to go around. I have to get mine, and if you take some, that means I don't have enough, right? Do you view the world that way? There's not enough. We always have to be always kind of watching what's happening because someone somewhere is coming for what we have. Or do you view the world that there is an abundance, that we have been given all that we need. It's all there. We have to discover it. We have to work for it. We have to find it. But there is more than enough. What is mine is yours. What is his is ours. What is hers is his. How do you view the world? Tell me which one of those lines up more with the overwhelming thrust of the Bible. Tell me where you could possibly find the Bible suggesting that God of all creation wants you to live in a scarce way, where you look at the world and think there's not enough to go around. If that person's success, and I'm not just talking about money and stuff. I'm not talking about possession. I'm talking about success and happiness. Have you ever met someone where they say, you're having a wonderful day, and they go, oh, it must be nice. As if your happiness has anything to do with theirs. Like, oh, you get the happy gene today. I got to put on these sad, like what? That's not actually how it works. So now let's apply that idea to leadership, right? Can you imagine the difference? I mean, you can, because we've all worked with people like this. Think about the difference of the leader who says, let's go scarcity first. Think about the difference between the leader who says, their success is at the cost of my success, right? Let's apply this to a real issue. We're in a presidential year, right? So these issues are being thrown out all over the place. We have a candidate. Can I just say a little bit about what I think about this? We have a candidate who is scaring people, saying, I'm going to bring us back to our glory days, right? Right? And what's he saying? He's essentially saying, it's all been taken away from you. It's all been taken away from us. There's not enough to go around. I'm going to go get it back. Right? Think about the leader that frames everything in a zero-sum game mentality, where if someone has something, they took it from us. They took it from me. To get something, I have to take it from them. Right? And then think about the leader that says, I start from the place that I believe that there is more than enough to go around. And that might include sacrifice on my part. So I brought up this presidential election thing because, there was Bernie Sanders was running, and he said it more than he might have said it more than he said his name. This 1% thing, right? He said he kept talking about this income inequality thing, and his whole point was that this is what's happening in the world because a very successful way to lead and construct systems in our world is to not care about the majority of people and take the most and let it go straight to the top. That's just true. That's how it works. It's not how it should be. But I believe that's because you have most leaders thinking about a scarce mindset. There's not enough to go around. There's only $100, so I'll keep 99. Everyone else can share one, and we'll all be fine. Imagine the abundant-minded leader who says, I'm convinced that when we all do better, we all do better. I'm convinced that there's more than enough to go around. I believe that perspective is actually very much rooted in what we believe about the Bible, what we believe about the way God has set up the world to work. I believe that perspective is much more in line with life and blessing and curiosity and abundance. So apply some of this to the context that you find yourself in, right? The challenges that I asked you to kind of throw out a little bit. And then think about that call from Deuteronomy 30:19. And think about these two choices that are laid before you today. When you're leading, when you're parenting, when you're working, when you're going to church, when you're working on a community project together, when you're neighboring, right? The stuff, the everyday stuff of life. These two options are laid before you: life and death, blessing and curse, curiosity and certainty, abundance and scarcity. My point here with you today is that a servant leader is more curious than they are certain, and they view the world as an abundant source where there's more than enough to go around of whatever it is that we're talking about, rather than a scarce place where people have to claw and climb over one another to get what they need to survive. And if a leader embodies this posture, they have a real shot at becoming a servant leader. So how does someone mention being listened to in the leadership challenge? Why would a leader not listen to someone? Is it because they're pretty certain that the person they're not listening to doesn't have anything to add to the conversation anyway? Or it may not even be that. What if it was because they think, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to listen to you. I don't have time. Why would they not have time? Because they view the world as this shrinking room coming in all around them. There's not enough time to deal with that. If they viewed the world as this abundant place where the work will get done, and if it doesn't, everyone will still be okay. But if they viewed the world from this place of abundance, it would probably allow them to be more curious about what's going on around them. So the thing that's really interesting is when you start playing with all of these words together. So how does someone who's stuck in a scarce mindset, how does that force them to become more certain about the people they're working with? When I feel like I don't have enough time, think about me and my children. When I feel like I don't have enough time, we have to get out the door, we got to go, and my little 6-year-old girl comes up to me and says, Daddy, I want to tell you a story. What do I say? I don't have time for that. I don't have time for your story, right? Now, there are some times where that is literally true. We're leaving and we have to go. But then there are other moments where I go, I have plenty of time. I have plenty of time. And I need to slow down and enter into her world and look her in the eyes and spark, just will it out of me, right? To be curious about what she's trying to do and who she's becoming and what she's showing me in that moment. I'm not saying everything in leadership is like parenting, but can you imagine? I want you to think about someone that you would consider to be one of your leaders. So it's easiest if you report to someone or whatever it is. And imagine that person. Really think about a specific person. And imagine if the next time you're around that person, they came into that meeting or that work shift or whatever it is, and they came up to you and they said, Sam, we have this struggle happening here in this place. What do you think about that? And then you were thrown off because they're asking you a real question, right? And then there was this weird thing that happened where there was silence. And you felt like you actually had space to share what you thought. And then something else happened that was just mind-blowing to you. They listened to what you said, right? Can you imagine? And then imagine if that person did that about 100 more times for the rest of the year. What would the culture be like in that company? What would the culture be like in that neighborhood? Imagine a politician. Imagine a politician who came into the neighborhood and was knocking doors, and instead of saying, hey, my name's Sam, and I believe these 3 things about this neighborhood, and I hope you will vote for me, and well, that's nice. Oh, nice dog, cute cat. Like, oh, this is wonderful. Bye. And then imagine another politician that walked up and said, hey, I'm Steve, or whatever the person's name is. How are you doing today? How long have you lived here? Tell me about your life in this neighborhood. I have some ideas about what I think about politics, but what do you think should happen in this neighborhood? And they're like, well, we just spent 15 minutes talking. That means I probably won't get to the next 10 doors that I was supposed to get to, but I'm really glad I got to hear your feedback. I'm really glad I got to hear what you think about your neighborhood. Would that make you feel differently? Right? So remember what I said earlier about the war general? Don't you think that even a war general, even like a football coach or some boxing trainer, don't you think this might be a better way to live with those people? Don't you think this might be a better way to interact with people, to listen, to hear what people have to say, to actually start from the place that people are good and they have something within them that is alive? And maybe it's been stomped down and beaten down and tamped out, but your job as the leader is to actually bring it back. Think about this room and what happens here and the teachings of Jesus that take place here. Imagine if leadership was viewed as a resurrection activity. Think about that. What if an act of leadership was supposed to be about resurrecting something in someone that has been stolen? That is choosing life over death. That is choosing blessing over curse. Calling someone back to what you know they once were, or calling someone back to what you know they could be. Is this connecting at all? Does this make sense? That's when I think about servant leadership, that's what I think it is. There's other things we might be able to get into, but I want to go into some Q&A time. Is that okay? So, does anyone have any questions? I love Q&A time, and I don't mind silence. So I don't view this as a personal rejection of me. I'm more than willing to wait it out. It makes for non-exciting video, but we have one back here.
So what happens when you actually do those things, but it don't work? Like,
Yeah.
they still ignore anything you say and act like you still were doing the things you were doing before.
And say the last part, they act like what?
They act like you were still doing the things you were doing before. Like they just expect it. Don't open to anything else.
Yeah, you're talking about people that you're leading, and you start behaving differently, and they don't necessarily respond. Yeah, so let's think about that. Why would that happen? If I have an anger problem and I yell at my kids for the first 10 years of their life, and then I stop yelling, you think they're going to buy it right away? Right. I might just be having a good day. So my point is, I think that all of this stuff, which is also true of everything that's true, it takes a long time. I just think it takes a long time. I think it takes a long. You're trying to call something back that was lost, and often people need to see that over and over and over and over. Think about trust. How is trust gained and kept? Not quickly. Not quickly. So I think it just takes a really long time. That would be my.
Now, is this a type of leadership that you implement over time? Because I know some people that think that servant leadership shows a lack of leadership because they really don't know what they're doing and they're asking people for help that they don't know. So do you implement it over time so that people become accustomed to it rather than thinking it's a lack of leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so servant leadership gets a bad rap, for sure. I mean, it gets a bad rap because they're two words that kind of contradict each other, we think. Right? Because we think of leadership as someone who's out in front, they have the bigger name tag, they drive the nicer car, they're the one out there, right? And the servant, we have a lot of different connotations around that word. We like to think about that person as someone who cleans up after the party, right? So the leader is the person who addresses the crowd at the banquet, the servant is the person who's serving dinner, right? So how can those two things go together? And quite frankly, I don't like the term. I don't like the term because it's just confusing. It's not very helpful. You know, if I could rename it, you know what I would call it? Humane leadership. Leadership with humanity. Remembering that leadership involves human beings, not human doings. Right? Leadership is the art of giving yourself away. That's it. So there's all of these little axioms and sayings about leadership, right? Like, if you think you're leading someone and no one's following, you're just out for a walk, right? If you and that's true, right? So, but that means that it involves people all the time, over and over and over and over. I think leadership is the act of giving yourself away. And so, when you're doing that, why? I mean, that brings in everything about you. That brings in why are you doing that? What's your motive for trying to be in a place of leadership, right? How many people they try to pursue leadership roles because they want the status and the prestige and the title, and they have no business working with other human beings. No business. You should not be working with other people because you hardly know how to be a person, right? And so what happens? People end up feeling like they're pushed around, they're shoved into little boxes, they can't become fully themselves. The reason I love this, I just love this so much to apply to leadership, is that leadership is looking at someone who is an alive human being with a divine spark within them, right? And calling it to all that it could be. Calling it out to all that it could be. And if you understand it with the abundance perspective, you understand that if you become everything you can be, it doesn't diminish me. It doesn't diminish him, right? So, yeah, the term is messed up. It's just not very good. It's a broken pot, right? I mean, but like Bible people should be used to that. We got broken language all over the place. We can't seem to figure out how to get past it. But I think it's a matter of just like living it out, right? I mean, it's just a matter of actually doing it over and over and over, building trust, gaining credibility, integrity that was brought up earlier, and just living it out. And you live it out enough and no one's going to think, oh, he's like the servant leadership guy. He's kind of weak. He can't do it. What they'll probably be thinking is, I love working with them because I actually have a voice. I love working with them because I feel like I contribute. So does that help? Go ahead.
So as a leader, how do you manage your the people you're leading when you do use the curiosity and you want to know how they're feeling about something, but then as a leader you still have to decide to make another decision from what they were asking, and now they feel like, still, why'd you ask me anyway?
Right.
Like, how do you relate that to them that
Right.
I'm asking you, but at the end of the day, I still have to make the tough choices?
Yeah, so that's such a good question. So this, I don't think at all, this is a really great strategy for one time. Like, this is not the best strategy for one interaction. But this is a brilliant strategy for the rest of your life, which is pretty good, right? I hope no one was coming here for like, I just need that one trick for that next meeting. I mean, that's not very helpful. Because the bottom line is there's a risk. What you're hitting on is brilliant because there's a risk of asking someone to lend their voice. If we all circled up right now and we said, all right, everyone, we're going to talk about leadership. What's the most important aspect of leadership, right? I don't know how many people we have in this room, but we'd have more than that different versions of what leadership is, right? Because the second you ask someone else to bring their voice to bear on a topic, to say what they think and believe, you're risking what? Disagreement? You're risking the fact that they might actually be wrong. If you're leading the company and you're responsible, so you're pastoring a church. You're responsible for this church to like be here in more than 6 months, right? And you're going to like turn over really huge areas of ministry to someone that maybe isn't ready? Well, that's not a responsible thing to do. At the same time, then there is a real risk involved with Pastor Sweeney asking someone, hey, we have this outreach program. What do you think about that? Are we doing this right? Is this the real way to go? Yeah, the first time, they might disagree. The first time the person he asked that question of may not have necessarily the best answer. But I will promise you something. If that person that he asked that question isn't used to having a leader ask them something and believe in them, it will light a match within them. Think about all the questions that would fire off for you. You're going to go home that day and think, oh my gosh, that pastor asked me a question. And he actually seemed interested. What do I think about that? I've never thought about that outreach program. I don't feel qualified to be giving advice about this outreach program. Maybe I need to go study other outreach programs. Just so you see what I mean? So it sparks something because we're being called to something more than we were doing before. There's a real risk that there's going to be disagreement, and you got to deal with that. But over the long haul, I just think it's the way to go. When that happens, when you ask a question and someone says something that's just bananas, and you're like, that's crazy, right? You know what you have an opportunity to do next as a leader is to model, how do we handle disagreement? How do we wade into the waters of compromise and understanding and experimenting with something. I mean, think about what happens when the leader says, you know what? And now the leader has to know if they can actually do this, okay? But think about what could happen if the leader says, that's not what I thought, but why don't we give it a shot? Why don't we give it a shot? Knowing that it's probably going to fail, right? But says, let's give it a shot. Let's see if we could do a new outreach program where we run around giving away neckties. And Pastor Sweeney's going, neckties? I asked, how do we help people who are dealing with hunger? And you said you want to start a necktie giveaway? You know what? I wouldn't have thought of that, but let's give it a shot, right? And then we come back and we go, it turns out no one who was hungry wanted neckties. So what did we learn, right? That's unheard of, unbelievable, right? So there's that. There's this learning opportunity, but I also think it's like disagreement. Our world, I was listening to a podcast this morning that I thought was so interesting, and I want to tell you something. It's this rabbi out in L.A., and someone asked her at the end of this interview, what are you looking forward to most over the next 10 years? And you know what she said? I'm looking forward to the election being over. And you know why? She said, because then we can get back to the business of learning how to talk to one another. Because one of the most incredibly tragic things that is lost in our political system is that politics was supposed to be this exercise in coming together and figuring out the best way forward. And for some reason, we are in this space where we're not actually able to talk about it without coming to blows. Our world is so bankrupt with knowing how to disagree with one another. It's insane. So if you have an opportunity as a leader to model disagreement, I think it's wonderful. How can you choose life and blessing and curiosity and abundance in the midst of disagreement? I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Did you still have a question back here? We had one here too, so.
Yes.
Great.
In leadership, and when you're teaching other leaders to become leaders, if you've been curious and you find out that they may have some leadership qualities or they have the desire, a lot of people are looking for like systematic. How do, step 1, step 2, step 3, how do you get that person to get from being systematic to owning life, abundance, curiosity? So how do you move them from the systematic approach to really taking ownership of those qualities that you just explained?
So I'm going to lean on Pastor Sweeney here. This Deuteronomy 30:19 thing, that comes after Moses giving the law to the people. Is that right? So think about this. I want to make sure that's true. I am no Bible scholar. I used to be a junior high pastor. That's about as far as I got, junior high. Think about this. So Moses lays out the law, the systematic. And at the end of that, what does he have to say? But at the end of the day, I lay before you 2 choices: life and death, blessing and curse. And here's the reason I bring that up. I am convinced that all the books and all the manuals and all the theory and all the systems in the world will never be able to replace the one-on-one mentoring, discipleship. Come walk with me, come watch me do it while I do it. Because here's the deal. Your question makes me want to say, well, here's a system for getting people from systems to this. And then that kind of that falls in on itself. And so I think the answer is, hey, I have this. So I'm also, and Pastor Sweeney and I talked about this. We don't have enough time to get into this right now. But I recently got into like community organizing and studying theory around community organizing. I think it plays in with servant leadership really well. I think it plays in with pastoring really well. There's a lot there. But one of the things about community organizing, I think it's really interesting to apply to leadership. One of the rules is, don't go anywhere alone. Don't go to any meeting alone. Because inherent in that idea is that every single meeting is an opportunity for you to show someone else what you're experiencing. It's an opportunity for you to bring someone along and say, hey, I'm about to go do this. You should come. Maybe on the car ride you say, now don't talk for like the first 30 minutes because I got to actually do business with this person. But you know what happens on the car ride back? What did you see? When that person said this and you saw my eyebrows go up and I shifted the conversation here, why do you think I did that? So I think these Christian people have it pretty spot on. This discipleship model, follow me, I think is the best way to go. You had a question still? Man, you're holding on to that question good. Thank you. Do you have a question too? Oh.
My question is, I always hear the phrase,
I can't
before
hear
you
you.
become, my question is, I always hear the phrase, before you become a leader, you need to be a follower. If you've been a follower for so long, how do you get to the leader phase? So where you can put all these actions, where you actually put all these actions into place.
Yeah, so I would flip it. I would just flip it. I would say, put all the actions into place, and you'll blink, and people will be calling you a leader. And people will be following you. There's this if-then thing that we do sometimes to ourselves. If I was just in this job, then I could be a leader. If I was just in that spot, then I could be a leader. Oh, I'll just wait till I'm this grade in school, then I'll get to be a leader. The problem is that when that comes, if you're not prepared, you don't get to do it. But the surefire way to be prepared is to just do it right now. Here's the deal. There is no permission guy at the door going, here's your permission slip to now be a leader. There's no one coming. That guy was fired years ago, right? It's not happening. And in fact, if you wanted to get spiritual, you could say that like this whole notion of like the imago Dei means you already have it. You already have it. So you start doing it, and then you turn around and you go, oh wow, people are responding to that. And if they're not responding, then you just keep doing it. Get better, keep sharpening it, and then you turn around and there's people following.
Do you believe that we're all, hold on. Do you believe that there are some people that are naturally followers or servants, and then some people are naturally leaders? Or is it a thing of the people that step up to be leaders, those are the ones that are leaders, and the ones that are servants, they're servants? Is it a natural thing, or is a thing that if you step up to the plate to be that, then that's what you can be?
Is it fair to rephrase your question as, are leaders born or taught?
Right, yeah, right. Gotcha.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I didn't want to say, oh, you're asking this, and you say, no, I'm not, actually. I think both. And it's not the most like popular response, but I just think both. I think there are some people who are unbelievable natural-born leaders, and they're 4.5, and they want to get in front of a room and say, hey, everyone, I'm here, right? Or they say, like, nope, that's not what we're having for dinner. Let's do this. And you're just like, excuse me? Like, sit down. Set the table. I didn't ask you. And then there are, throughout the Bible, there are countless stories. I don't know, there's this one guy who said, I can't really speak that well. I'm not ready for this. There are countless stories of people who were not natural-born leaders, who discovered something within themselves, and they achieved something way greater than they ever thought possible. And so I have to say it's both. I have to. Because to say that it's only taught, right, means that some people who are born with these natural firings, they're just like these explosive figures in our world that wasn't some amazing act of creation. But to say that you're only born means that at some, and who's the decider? Think about this for a second. Who decides? Who's the decider in that equation? If you subscribe to the fact that there's only born leaders, and some people are born with it, some people aren't, who decides that? Is it in the hands of a pastor? Not yours, of course, but in the hands of a pastor who might have a more of a scarce mindset, who says, well, if you think you're a leader, and you think you're a leader, and you think you're a leader, I'm going to be out of a job. So no, I think you're all followers. I think you're followers. Is it in that person's hands to decide if you're born with it or not? I don't think so. And so I think it's a little bit of both. There are some amazing people born with incredible gifts, and there are other people who need to really learn it along the way, and they're going to uncover something that's world-changing potentially. Go ahead.
Are there, I think, are there some things where you lead and sometimes you lead and sometimes you follow? Like, is there like a little bit of both in everybody, or?
I think that's fair. I think the sacrifice is what that question hits on for me. Sacrifice is when a leader says, I'm going to follow you here. Yeah, I might have the job or the title or the status or the role, but I heard what you said because I'm curious. I'm not threatened by your existence in the room. I want to hear what you have to say, and I'm about to follow your lead. What do you think we should do here? I mean, a leader has to be willing to do that if they're actually going to listen to someone. Otherwise, they're faking it. They're just totally faking it. So I think there are moments where the highest leader has to say, all right, I'm ready. President Obama, right? Commander-in-chief. In the Situation Room, he has experts at the table. He asks for advice. What if he said, I don't know if I know as much as you, but don't do that, do this. No, he has to follow them. He has to say, all right, I'm with you. I trust what you're bringing to the table here. So I think it's both. We out of time? Pretty good? Yeah. I just want to say one thing. The Q&A session was wonderful. Got a slow start, but we kind of ramped it up a little bit. But really what I want to say to you is just thank you. This is kind of strange, right? I don't have like a bunch of things to say and like I'm some like grand teacher. There's like lights and cameras and a stage, which is a little bit bananas. And I just want to acknowledge that. All of this stuff, I believe it to my core. And so what I wish, and I realize all the factors why we're not doing it this way, but what I wish was that we had a chance to talk about every single person in this room, about your life, and about how this connects to even to the places where you think it doesn't apply. Because these issues are not just leadership issues for someone who's leading a company or leading a church. These are issues for when you find yourself struggling with how to interact with another human being. These are some of the things that I think apply there. And you do that over and over and over enough, and all of a sudden, this leadership thing really begins to emerge. So thank you so much for allowing me to come here and share a few ideas and listening and asking questions. I just really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thanks.
Wow. That was pretty good. So hopefully you heard something tonight that you can take and begin to apply to your own life and wherever you have an opportunity to lead, whether it's in your family, your community, you're on your job, your church, whatever that is. Hopefully you'll take something from tonight and think about how to apply it. I will also encourage you, a good exercise that will help retention is to call someone up tonight and share with them what you learned and how you might apply it to your own life. And because other than that, we just came and sat through a talk, so I want to encourage you that way. If you're interested in looking at some of our back Life U Talks, you can go to our Life University YouTube channel, and you can look at some of the other presentations. And if you really enjoyed this talk, it will be uploaded to our Life University YouTube channel shortly. All right? Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out, spending this time. I'd like to thank Service Spring, Mike McAleer, for coming out and assisting us with our video and our promotional materials is always appreciated. And we just really feel blessed to have you guys as a partner of Tabernacle. So can we give a warm applause to SSC? And I liked all a lot of the young men were asking questions tonight. That was pretty cool. And I didn't have an opportunity to be in a forum like this when I was your age. So hopefully you guys are going to be better off for it. So I appreciate all those who ask questions. The last Tuesday of the month is when we do our Life University. So please just set your calendars for that and just know on the last Tuesday of the month is when we do our Life University.